What's going on, everybody? I am Jeff Upson, and you are now tuned in to the PA Power Hour. And you can see on the screen behind me, we got a special guest, Dustin Hockensmith from Penn Live, Patriot News. And I think the last time we had you on, you froze very shortly after talking, which, the face that you made in it was not a good one. So maybe we can avoid you freezing this time. Do you think we can make that happen, Dustin?
One correction to what you're saying is the previous two times I actually
Oh,
froze.
geez.
So we're trying to get to the finish line. I feel good about it this time around.
Okay. Well, I mean, if you say so. Either way, we got your audio and we can hear you, which is most important, right? And despite you repping the sanctioned PA, shirt, which I like a lot, I think we're gonna still be able to. Yeah, I like good job. We still are going to be able to talk a lot about District 3 and the Southwest or South Central Regional that's happening this weekend. And what I love about this weekend is these are the first wrestlers that are making it to Hershey, right? These are the first wrestlers that qualify into the bracket. All the other regions have to essentially go through another week in order for that to happen. So this is our first look at some of our state qualifiers, especially in AAA. So we're going to go through. Dustin, you are kind of I wouldn't call you an expert, because that's a term we don't want to throw out too loosely, but you're certainly in the know with District 3. You and Dave Hecker did a show yesterday, I believe, looking at the brackets. What's your overall opinion of District 3? I mean, and you can be honest. You don't need to, this is a statewide broadcast. So what is your expectations for this weekend at Spring Grove?
I think there are more brackets that have pretty quality depth to them. When you're looking at state rankings and things, you're looking at brackets that have some, maybe a handful of top 15 type guys. I don't know if there's one in this group that has a 1 versus 2 type situation. So there are definitely some weights that you're going to have to battle through, and there's not going to be a pushover round. But I think in the grand scheme of things, this is not District 3's best year, if we're being honest about it, when it comes to producing high-end, elite, state champion type wrestlers. But I think the tournament's going to be good. And I think as we go through this bracket, we'll see that, that parity can be a pretty good thing when it comes to competitive matchups in the first round and the quarterfinals.
And you said it, the term competitive. I think District 3 as a whole is very competitive across the board, right? You may not have those typical, hey, we're going to have the number 1 versus number 2 in the state, or maybe even a top 5 matchup in the regional finals, maybe like we're accustomed to. Talking to our good friend Mitch Rupert, in the District 4 sectional tournament, they had the number 1, 2, and 3 guy in the state, all in the same section, right? And they're going to see that for probably a couple more weeks now. So again, District 3, maybe not the best year, but I still see a lot of depth, especially from schools that aren't the, historically tough wrestling schools, right? And we're seeing a lot of different programs and different areas popping up. So I like that, right? You don't always want to see, as biased as I am, Central Dauphin and Cumberland Valley just dominating, right? It's nice to have a little bit mix of that. So we're going to jump right into the brackets, Dustin, and start off at 106 pounds. At the top of the bracket, you'll see Dean Hauser of Daniel Boone. So Dean, as a sophomore, comes in with a 32-4 record. I like Dean a lot. I've seen him, I think, 3 or 4 times already this year at various different tournaments. He's been up at 113, down to 106. Last year, he was a very undersized 106-pounder. This year, that ain't the case. He's all of 106 and fills out really good there. I think, really, at 106 as a whole is a very open weight class. Dean Hauser is certainly, I think, the front runner here, but he's going to get tested early, I think, with Liam Flanagan in the quarterfinals, should Flanagan beat Carly from Dallastown and Hauser wins his first round matchup. Flanagan's a guy who came second out of a really deep Section 2 tournament, which was really deep at 106 and across really a lot of weight classes here. And then on the bottom half, you have Mason Harvey from Redline, and Jordan Williams is the guy that I have circled here from Hempfield. has just been really consistent. Again, he came out on top of that tough sectional from section 2, where he finished ahead of Marco Tassi and Liam Flanagan, both guys that have had a lot of experience over the last 6 months or so. So I'm looking forward to this bracket just because I really don't know what to expect. I could see Mason Harvey losing in the first round to Louis Malov from Manheim Township, who's been on a tear. But Phil Montez from Cumberland Valley, like, what are we going to get from him? He's a guy who probably wasn't expecting to be here because his teammate Cooper Killian was a 106-pounder who went up. So you got to be excited about 106 because historically District 3 has had, a couple hammers where like, hey, we're chasing those guys. This isn't the case this year.
It's pretty wide open, and I think all the names that you mentioned, and really when you say Dean Hauser undersized as a freshman at 106 last year, now he's a full-framed 106. That's Liam Flanagan's story exactly. And section 2, you have Liam Flanagan, you have Marco Tassi, and Jordan Williams are all holdovers from the same section last year. So that was a really competitive section last year, really competitive again this year. And one of those weight classes where you could definitely make the case that Marco Tassi would win it. You could make the case that Liam Flanagan would win it. Really balanced there. And it's just kind of who shows up. So I love that Liam Flanagan, Dean Hauser matchup likely in the quarterfinals there. Liam Flanagan has had some opportunities looking at the team championship tournament in Hershey and even into last week to wrestle high-end guys, and he just has come up short in those matchups. But I do believe he is fully capable of making a run here, and I would love to see Marco Tassi against Dean Hauser or Liam Flanagan in that semifinal would be a good matchup. I really liked Marco to get out of the other portion of that bracket. Phil Montez, really good story for him. As you mentioned, Connor Killian started the year was a top 10, 106 in the state. He got COVID. He gained approximately 22 pounds through that process. And then it was a journey for him to try to get his way back down, which he did. He wrestled Zach Sherman from Chambersburg in a duel in January, but he wasn't able to hold that weight. And then, Alex Tennis ended up winning that weight at 113 for Cumberland Valley. He's in the district tournament. And at 120, Jake Mitchell, a freshman, a pretty good freshman, won that weight for Cumberland Valley, and he's in the district tournament too. So now you have Phil Montez, who just kind of waited his turn, and he wrestled really, really well last week. And he's a guy that sort of an unknown commodity, I think, because you didn't see him on the front lines at some of these high-end tournaments. But he'll be an interesting matchup. I don't think he has quite enough to beat Marco Tassi in the quarterfinal round if that's how things play out. But even Marco has to wrestle Eli Leapart, who I think you've seen the pendulum swing a little bit for him. I think he's been really good at times, not quite so good as you might expect from a freshman. But if good Eli Leapart shows up, then you might have a battle on your hands in that first round matchup too.
You mentioned Zach Sherman from Chambersburg. This is a guy who I thought at times showed greatness. I thought, man, this guy is somebody who's going to punch through and have some quality wins. And he does have quality wins. I mean, Sherman pinned Mason Harvey the end of December. I think it was at the Trojan Wars tournament, pinned him. So you got to look at that quadrant. Just based off of previous results, Sherman gets out there. Should Harvey win, he's in the semifinals, right? If he can duplicate that match that he had in December against Mason Harvey. Now, Mason Harvey is a very different wrestler than he was back in December. And the reason I say that is you can just tell by looking at his results. So he gets pinned by Sherman, beats Eli Leapart 7-6 on January 13th. Fast forward to last weekend, he beat Eli Leapart in the finals 18-5. So you take that from a 1-point match to a 13-point match. I don't think Eli Leapart got worse. In fact, I know he didn't get worse. I think Mason Harvey just got a little bit better. So Sherman's a guy who I'm looking at to say, hey, you could be a bracket buster. Mason Harvey could get upset in that first round with Louis Malov, who I think is really tough despite having over 10 losses in his season. So like you said, this is anyone's shot, man. I could see a lot of things going haywire here. I'll bet the steady horse and say Dean Hauser wins it with Jordan Williams in the finals. But outside of that, man, it's anybody's guess. Like you said, there's a plethora of different situations or scenarios that I think could unfold here at 106 pounds.
And I think the balance when you look at trying to project who's in that final, which I would project the same thing, Dean Hauser and Jordan Williams. Jordan Williams had a really good sectional run with those wins there. And if he carries that over, he's a contender to win it. But then you also look at, we've talked about what, 7, 8 guys in this bracket. Okay, now 3 or 4 of those guys are dropping down in the consolation rounds, and there's just going to be 2 spots available there. So you're going to see a war in the consolation rounds, and you better bring it. There's no time to feel sorry for yourself in a weight class like this one that is pretty balanced. You're going to have a tough competitor probably the moment you hit that consi round.
Your new nickname is Dustin Bring It Hawkinsmith. I think that's a beautiful nickname for you. Bring it, like that's just gonna be your tagline. Does anyone ever call you Dusty? I feel like that's a nickname that I've never heard anyone call you. Does anyone call you that?
I think it stopped around age 14, I think. But
I
get it sometimes. I think we should bring it back. There are people that I work with.
I think we're gonna bring it back. So
I just want you and your audience to be happy, and if that means call me Dusty, then go for it.
So you gotta forgive me. Last night I played a very cruel trick on Greg Warnock on the the War Up podcast, and I don't have any tricks up my sleeve tonight for you, Dustin, but I can't let you go without a little friendly banter. So let's move up on that note to 113 pounds, where the world was set afire when Nico Tassi of Warwick beat the returning state champion Caden Williams of Manheim Township in the sectional finals. It was an overtime match, and I got to see that exchange in the finals there, and I thought Caden Williams had a takedown, and then boom, somewhere along the line, Nico burst out of it, and next thing you know, he's getting the takedown. I mean, it was a phenomenal scramble there. Those two have wrestled a handful of times this year, and boy, I'd like to see it again too. So Nico Tassi is at the top there. He's 35-2, just like Marco, man. Those two, and you and I have talked with Pat, Tassi quite a bit about their development, and I think we're really starting to see how that is. We have seen how that played out this year, right? We kept on hearing, and this was the season where like, okay, they weren't playing around here. Obviously, you beat the returning state champion Caden Williams, who hasn't had, he and Camden both have had a little bit of a downturn with some things, and there were some issues there. But I think overall, Caden has been wrestling pretty consistently, so that was a huge win for him. Again, much like 106, after those first two initial, outside of Caden Williams, James Garcia, and Nico Tassi, this is anybody's weight, in my opinion. Again, you look at James Garcia from Wilson, West Lawn, and he has a win over Nico Tassi. He beat him 6-5 back at the Hurricane Classic. And, he's had a really good year this year. He's had a couple big wins. He was up at 120 for most of the season before coming down to 13. And, he's had a couple head scratchers. He lost to Joey Henderson from Exeter when he was up at 120 and after beating him 2-0. So can James Garcia be a guy here who ends up, pushing the pace with some of these guys and, gets out and beats Caden Williams in the quarterfinals? I don't know, but outside of those three, I can tell you it's very wide open.
Yeah, and I do think 3 of the top 4 are in the bottom half of this bracket. Nico Tassi being in the top, you are going to see, in all likelihood, Caden Williams and Jimmy Garcia in that quarterfinal round. And, I just want to see Caden Williams come back from that little bit of adversity. And I think he's mentally tough enough to do that. Looking back, just the little bit, I saw the scramble at the end of regulation with him and Tassi. I saw the scramble in sudden victory where Tassi, like you said, very, very close to given up 2, and such good mat awareness and quick thinking to be able to kind of sit out of it.
Right.
and he deserved every bit of that. And to me, I mean, when you look at those two go back and forth, I didn't really look at that as being some fluky thing. Like I looked
No.
at it as Nico Tassi very much being in that match again, if or when they do square off, which I would project them to square off in the District 3 finals here. Caden Williams is going to have to bounce back. Nico Tassi, I think I think he's going to make pretty short work of the top half of that bracket. If I'm looking at it, there's some nice guys up there. Trent Rubel from Conestoga Valley was in the Section 1 finals. Rylan Carter from Chambersburg won the Section 3 finals. But I don't think they're really in the same league as Nico is. I'm more looking at the bottom half of this thing. Travis Clausen would be the other top four guy. So I think Caden Williams, Nico Tassi, Jimmy Garcia, and Travis Clausen in some sequence would be my top four at this weight class. And I think that's how I see it playing out, with Caden Williams reaching the finals and getting another shot at Nico Tassi. And I think speaking of bring it, both of them need to bring it in that one.
I love it, Dustin. Bring it,
Yeah,
Hawkinsmith.
listen, you opened a can of worms, and now I'm going to use that extremely corny cliche.
This is going to backfire
phrase
me now.
Every opportunity I get.
This is going to backfire
Correct.
me. So you look at and you said Rylan Carter, another guy I look at like Sherman, who's had some glimpses of really good matches, but then some other ones you're scratching your head at a little bit. So, Carter, I think he has a tough first round with CJ Faree from CD. But should he get there, I think he makes it to the semifinal. So, he's going to drop down to a nice, should he not get past Tossi, which you're saying he won't, he's going to come down and I think be, in contention depending on who he gets there. It's easy. It's much easier to get out to that semifinal and be one match away from qualifying for the state tournament as opposed to wrestling back and having to beat five pretty decent guys in a row, so to speak. So there's a couple landmines in here. Like you said, Travis Clausen I thought has had a good season, but has just been a little bit below some of those other guys. Nico Tassi loses to Caden Williams 6-4 and then turns it around. This would be the rubber match should they get a third time. Trent Rubel from Conestoga Valley, a guy who's pinned Dean Hauser, hasn't had a ton of matches this year, but he's been very consistent. He's a senior, right? He's a senior. I feel like he's been around forever. I keep on seeing his name. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he graduated. So you never want to look past a senior. He's got Jaden Rooney right off the get from Waynesboro. So another guy who I wouldn't look past. But overall, it's again after those four, Elijah Hewitt from Northeastern. Not a whole lot of. You look at the schedule that Northeastern has, it's not a lot of ranked matchups that he's seen this year. And I think we see that play out here in the sectional or the district tournament because some of the sections were very not good this year. And that's just a fact of the matter is some of the sections were just not deep at all. And unfortunately, some of the sections were just loaded. I would say Section 2 had a lot of depth, and some weights in Section 4 had a lot of depth as well. So it's just interesting to see how, because it's completely the sections are completely different from when I wrestled for CD. Like they're all screwed up. They're wrestling teams that I never imagined to be in the same section, but it's interesting to see how the dynamics of the sections actually play out.
And there's always going to be an ebb and flow to it. I mean, especially this particular year, as we talked about a little bit earlier, is that the concentrated the Central Dolphins, the Cumberland Valleys, the schools at Cedar Cliff, the traditional powerhouses have given some ground this season to Hempfield and Gettysburg, and looking out at Lancaster, Lebanon, even some of the more individual matchups, even if they're not teams. I think that there's a pretty good balance of power in District 3 this particular season. And you see that reflected in a lot of these brackets, but 4 sections for AAA this year in a lot of weight classes just felt like a lot. There were some really thin spots at some of these weights. There were 12-man brackets, and there were quite a few, I think, that didn't have 12 guys in them. So, four sections felt like a lot of sections this year. And this year, the way that Boiling Springs competed, they were the fourth place team in AA, and West Perry had a really, really good year. Bishop McDevitt has a lot of hammers. This year, two sections in AA, which is all we have. Didn't feel like enough in some respects.
Yeah, that's interesting how that plays out, because you're right. There was a lot of clumping. There was a lot of just grouping of a lot of tough wrestlers in each section, and yeah, that's, again, it ebbs and flows, as you said. So, but it doesn't really ebb and flow too much when we go up to 120, because it's the same old story. We got a Williams twin here wrestling at 120 pounds, and man, I'm looking forward to 120 pounds. Is this the year Mason Leapart is the guy that we expect him to be, right? That is my question that I have, and obviously we're not going to have that answer for a few more weeks, but Mason Leapart has been so damn close so many times, right? I mean, I can remember his freshman year. I'm like, man, he's going to blow up, man. He's going to knock some people out here, and it just didn't happen. And then last year he has that crazy match with Mac Church where, folks down in Dover will still say, like, he had him beat. They're not going to let that one go. And this year all he does is go undefeated, 32-0. He's again been consistent, but these next two tournaments are, I have him number one in the state, right? Over Vinny Kilkiri. And I look at their quality wins and quality losses. Well, Mason doesn't have any losses, and Vinny has had some stumbling blocks that he's experienced across the years. So Mason, being a senior, a guy who's battle tested, can he be that guy? And then on the bottom half, it's another kind of enigma, because you have Camden Williams, who only had 17 matches this year. I got to see him out at Powerade. Did not look himself, did not look good. In fact, just kind of stopped wrestling in one of his matches. And of course he was injured, right? I mean, especially when you're dealing with head injuries, you want to be more cautious about that than anything else. So is he back to form yet? And I would say he's not. I would say, just looking at some of his results from the sectional tournament, he's not quite the Camden Williams that we saw last year, that just burst through and won the super region by beating the crap out of Vinny Kilkiri in that match. So, again, the steady hand here, I think, is Mason Leapart, but I don't know, because he's on the same half with Gavin Richard. Gavin Richard, I've been impressed with as well. I got to see a lot of Daniel Boone this year. Impressed with him. And on the bottom half, you have Rocco Fertella from Northern York, who's been pretty consistent as well, and has some pretty big wins under his belt. So I think this is a story of two of the top guys, and then another tier of guys that are trying to break through. But my question is Mason Leapart, is 2022 his year?
Well, I would definitely pick it, and I think of those, that 32-0, the schedule that Dover wrestles, just at being in the York Adams League, and it's not quite where Vinny Kilkiri's is, for example. So to put them side by side in their resumes and the toughness of their schedule, probably no comparison. But Mason Leapart has wrestled some tough kids, and he wrestled in the Trojan Wars final, the kid from out of state who was a Beast of the East finalist, was a state champ, and beat him pretty soundly. And what he does, and I think last year, as you alluded to, he kind of turned the corner. And I think for him, just the mental side of it, of staying himself and continuing wrestling to win, instead of getting into that mode where he tightens up and wrestles not to lose instead. And I think that was the development in his game last year that he can carry with him going forward. He's a pretty rock solid, steady individual, just as a person. And he's a very tough ride on the top, and he can do some scoring even on quality kids from the top position. I think the clash of styles, Camden Williams, him and Mason Leapart, the clash of styles. I mean, Camden Williams is going to want to try to go upper body on him. He's going to want to try to leverage him and maybe get some throws and some big moves. Can Mason Leapart stay out of that? That's a question. And then when they're on the mat, Can Camden Williams hang with Mason Leapart where that's kind of his bread and butter? But in order to get there, one matchup I'm looking at, I think you've got a big three at this weight, Rocco Fratelli being one of them, Camden Williams being one, and Mason Leapart being one. You all have a lot of landmines, to borrow your term, from the 113 pound bracket. There's a lot of guys who have disruptive capabilities. Weston Bear from Solanco, Jake Mitchell from Cumberland Valley, Luke Menser from Chambersburg, who wrestled pretty well against Fratelli in the sectional final, Gavin Richard. Damian Key is a guy that is just really tough to score on. He's not a high octane scorer himself, but in terms of matching up with him, he's a tricky matchup. So looking at all these guys, Dallas Shore from Central Dauphin, if he's wrestling his best, he's kind of a pesky competitor too. But I like Rocco Fratelli to get a matchup with Camden Williams. It happened in the district tournament last year at 113 pounds, but the circumstances are really, really different. And I'm looking at Camden Williams when it comes to momentum and mat time and just where he's at as a competitor right now. It's a very different scene for him now versus where he was last year, with a lot of momentum on his side. He beat Aiden Lewis at districts. He beat Rocco Fratelli at districts. But this year, he's trying to kind of start back up from a lengthy layoff. And so when you see Camden Williams, who pinned Rocco Fratelli at districts last year, this is going to be a little bit different matchup. And I think Rocco should be game for it. You've seen him, he went into overtime with Zach Jacaruso opening weekend and lost that one in overtime. You saw him get blitzed early by Vinny Kilkiri. And I told somebody, I think if you can't hold your ground for the first 90 seconds or so against Vinny Kilkiri, he's going to make it a pretty miserable matchup. The only shot you've got is to weather that storm, and Rocco Fratelli just didn't weather that storm against him. But Rocco's a really solid kid, and he's on a little bit more stable footing now than say Camden Williams. So that semifinal, if they both make it there, will be a really good one. I think Mason Leapart is kind of on a mission right now. He's your state number one for a reason. But you do, I think if you look at all the number ones in the PA Power rankings in AA and AAA, he's one where it's like, man, I mean, the 120 pound weight class at a statewide level is very talented and very deep. So he's one that you look at and say, yeah, he's the number one, but Troy Holman and Vinny Kilkiri and Camden Williams. I mean, there's a lot of people coming for that. I think it's a big weekend for him to kind of fortify that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, you're no doubt. I mean, you look at people say, how can you rank Mason Leapart ahead of state champ Vinny Kilkiri? And again, body of work, and Mason has just been very consistent, whereas Vinny has been a little inconsistent this year. And I'll agree with you what you said about Damian Key. Boy, I got to see him at the team state tournament, and he's like an annoying wrestler to wrestle, because he is, like you said, he puts himself in positions where you're like, man, I want to score on you, and you're not letting me. Like, come on, I'm more talented than you, but I was impressed with Damian Key at the state tournament. Gavin Richard, I've been impressed with him all season. So I do think he's a solid number 4 there, but I agree that there are some, quote, landmines with Weston Barr. Fratelli, you mentioned it. He was an overtime match away from beating Zach Jacaruso. He beat a state medalist in Ross Dahl. One of his losses is to Cohen Boni, 4-3, who is number 2 in the state in AA. He lost to Christian Fretwell from Wyoming Seminary, but when he's on, he's really hard to beat. Beat Jake Mitchell 9-2 and beat Luke Menser 6-1 in the sectional tournament. I'm just, again, it's a completely different story from it was last year, because Fratelli is a guy who has had over 35, matches this season, whereas Camden Williams just hasn't been on solid ground, like you mentioned. So I do expect it to be Camden and Mason, but I would not be surprised whatsoever to see Rocco get in there and be in the mix for sure. So and Gavin Richard as well. I think he's a solid number 3 or 4 coming out of the top half as well. So 120, a lot more firepower than the first 2 weights, but still a little bit of parity. Would you agree, Dustin?
I would agree with that for sure. I think when you get again into the consolation rounds, whoever survives, in both of these and reaches the semifinal will have a nice advantage if they do end up losing there. But I think there's a bunch of guys that you just don't really want to see, and you're going to have to run through multiple of them if you want to get to the consolation final and grab that spot. Which, by the way, I know this doesn't necessarily need to be said, but to not have a super regional looming over everybody,
True.
the way District 3 is with so many teams, and this being a district slash regional, these kids and these programs have gotten really, really used to having a week off after this. To get ready for states, and last year to have not only to not have that week, but then to have to go west and wrestle against the WPIAL was just a really brutal
Mm.
situation for a lot of these guys.
Yeah, not a lot of fun, right? Not a lot of fun there with that looming over you, as you mentioned. So, let's move up to 126 pounds, where looming above everybody is Carl Schindeldecker from Chambersburg. My gosh, I can't believe he's a senior, because I feel like we've been talking about him for years. I can still remember him beating Matt Mayer from Bethlehem Catholic at the state tournament, and I'm just like, how in the heck did Carl Schindeldecker come in here and put on the performance like he did? Because he came in with not such a great record, and here he is now as a senior. He's 17-1 on the season. Last year, state runner-up to Mac Church, tiebreaker match there. He's clearly the guy, right? But Carl hasn't been on the mat a whole ton this year. He's only had 18 matches this year, which back in the day was a good amount, but in today's day and age, it's not a whole lot. So, and to be honest with you, he has a pretty tough road, in my opinion, to the finals, because he's got Elias Long right out of the gate. Section 4 at 126 pounds was stacked. You look at the top 4 finishers here, and they're pretty darn good. Zach Luckenball from Dallastown was the champion, but Zach Emery from York Suburban was a runner-up. Levi Snyder from Spring Grove makes a triumphant return to the mat. Last year was one of the top guys in the region, but sliced his hand earlier this year before the season, I think with a box cutter or something, and just had to get surgery on his hand. So I can't believe he's back, but he is. He was third there. Obviously, Schindeldecker is the story, but on the bottom half, Josh Hillard, same thing. He's a journeyman, man. He's been around for a while. He's had a lot of good matches this year. Manheim Township has wrestled a tough schedule, so he's definitely poised. I think we're going to see a Schindeldecker Hillard final here, and Hillard on the bottom half. I mean, I'd say he's on the easier half when looking at the different ranked guys.
Looking at the rankings, yeah, I would say the same thing. But I do like, Zach Emery can wrestle. He's a senior. Clayton Kozer from Lower Dolphin looked really good to me at the sectional tournament. He lost in the semifinals to Schindeldecker, but Schindeldecker had to work. He pinned him, but Schindeldecker had to work for that. He's an interesting little sophomore there, where if he kind of wrestles with reckless abandon, he's capable of being that dark horse in this bracket. That first round matchup between Levi Snyder, whose story you just told, and Trenton Walker, who's been around and done a lot of wrestling for Carlisle. When Trenton Walker opens up and is flying around, he can be funky, and he's quick, and he's a creative wrestler. He's a difficult guy to wrestle in a one-off without having a real detailed scouting report on him. He was in the sectional finals. He injury defaulted off the whistle to Carl Schindeldecker, which we saw in a couple other situations too. So he's a little dinged up, but that matchup there, whoever wins between Walker and Snyder has a pretty pretty decent shot, I think,
Yeah.
of reaching the semifinal and maybe getting a shot at Josh Hillard there. But yeah, I like that first round matchup between Walker and Snyder. Kind of both of them are wild cards, and they're wrestling each other in round one. But looking at the other ones, Zach Luckenball doesn't get a great draw with Eli Gregoris, because
No.
Section 3 was pretty good at 126 pounds also.
But I think the winner there is set up pretty nicely. The winner of Gregoris and Luckenball is set up pretty nicely, because Section 1 was not deep at all. The champion down at the bottom, Jacob Grisbeck. Is that how you'd say it? How would you pronounce that, Dustin? Grisbeck.
Yeah, maybe that's what. Yeah, we'll go with that.
Grzybek. Grisbeck.
Zerbeck. I don't know.
I would say you look at some other landmines. Seamus Mack from Hempfield is a guy who I would not want to have to wrestle. I know he has 11 losses on the year, but he is. I mean, he's very tough. I've been impressed with him, and Hempfield's had a tough schedule. So him coming out for the quarterfinals, again, could cause some headaches for Carl Schindeldecker. I think Carl Schindeldecker getting to the finals, he's going to have to earn it because Elias Long, Mack, and then probably a Luckenball or Gregor's winner there would likely be Luckenball. Luckenball looked great in the Section 4 championship. He won 11-0 over Zach Emery, who, like you said, can wrestle. So Luckenball may be peaking at the right time. At the team tournament, I thought he looked good. Had a couple tough matches there. But opening night on that Monday night against Springford, he lost to Quinn Smith and then lost to Xander Fatoris 1-0, but beat Todd McGann. So I'm excited to see how this shakes out. But Schindeldecker is the guy who you're saying, okay, can you repeat what you did last year and make it to the state finals?
And his story, as you alluded to, so he had, in terms of percentages, as a freshman at the state tournament, he had the worst record in the tournament.
Right,
and, I had seen him wrestle. He wrestled Ben Mon, who was a state medalist from Cumberland Valley. And I saw them wrestle some really good head-to-head matchups throughout the year. But that was always, I remember being surprised by Schindeldecker wrestling Ben Mon and approaching Matt Menser and be like, man, he really wrestled him tough, didn't he? I was surprised. And Matt Menser, Chambersburg coach, was like, of course he did. Obviously he did. He knew at that point. But what happened was, at this tournament as a sophomore, he wrestled Will Betancourt. And then I forget who he lost to in the consolations. He did not make the state tournament as a sophomore. And it kind of, contributed to this narrative that Carl Schindeldecker was a little bit of a fluke or a one-hit wonder as a freshman. So then he comes roaring back as a junior, looked outstanding all the way through. And, Mac Church was better. But Carl Schindeldecker was right there with him. And so now you have Schindeldecker sticking at 126. He's very long. He can funk if he needs to. He can ride hard if he needs to. He can score off his own shots. He can score off your shots. His game is so well-rounded. It's just hard to see anybody beating him. He's had to deal with a little bit of respiratory stuff this year. So as long as that's kind of under control and he feels good and he's breathing well and all that, I think this is his tournament to win here. He looked good last week at the sectional tournament.
So fun fact, you talked about he lost in the regional tournament. The guy he lost to was Andrew Christie, who's now at Bishop.
That's what I thought it was.
Yeah, Andrew Christie was at New Oxford at the time, 120 pounds, and was only, I believe, he was only a freshman then, I think. Obviously you look at it back then, you're like, how did you lose that? You were a state medalist and you lose to Andrew Christie. But now you look at it and you're like, okay, they're both pretty tough. So I can see that happening. Let's go up to 132 pounds. I'm sorry, Dusty. Dusty, did you want to say something? Did you want to tell Schindeldecker needed to bring it?
I think I wish that went without saying, but I am going to have to say it a bunch more times. But yeah, I think at that point, Andrew Christie was still kind of an unknown at New Oxford.
For sure.
He ended up being a state qualifier, and now he's 152 pounds, and I think has pretty clearly established him as the best guy outside of Jackson Arrington at 152 pounds. So
yeah, I think you could make
not
that
a bad
argument.
loss for Schindeldecker. Yeah.
So 132 pounds, Matt Repos from Central Dauphin, a two-time state medalist, also has some history with Mac Church. Of course, he won on a caution call back when they were both freshmen at 106 pounds. Didn't have quite the tournament at Hershey last year that many were expecting from him, but he is back to form. He's at 132 pounds here at the top. Aiden Bachman from Cedar Cliff is also on that top half. I think that Matt Repos is pretty much, I think he's not going to go untested, but I feel pretty good about him going to the finals here in the top half. On the bottom half, Ivan Vega from Spring Grove has looked at times really, really good this year. I got to see him at the Panther Holiday Classic. Got a couple big wins there to win the title, and and has been a little banged up this year. So I think that's contributed to it. The question I have is Garrett Gear from Garden Spot, another guy who I can't believe is still around because he's been around for a long time. Not to mention there's a ton of gears that wrestle in that Garden Spot area. Overall, though, you gotta like Repos' chance. Would you agree?
Yeah, I would agree for the same reasons that I laid out with Carl Schindeldecker. His game is so well rounded. He looks really good at 132 pounds. Last year, you know, I think Central Dolphin as a program, they were looking at okay, this pandemic year and sort of the disruptions in training and the disruptions that occurred throughout the season. I think they were looking to get all their guys feeling as good as they possibly could in the postseason in terms of their weights. So you had Matt Repos as a freshman, made a pretty hard cut to get down to 106. Then last year as a sophomore, didn't make the hard cut, opted to kind of stay as fresh as he could be at 126, and ended up, I think, hurt him, at the super regional. Luke Simcox, for example, was a lot bigger than him. Ethan Bergank from Hempfield area was a lot bigger than him. And I think him being a little bit small and not being able to kind of use that quickness, and there's a lot of situations on the mat where if you're the stronger kid, it's just kind of hard to overcome that. And that's what Matt Repos was facing last year. Wrestled Tyler Kasak pretty tough in the first round of states, ended up losing that one. But I really like him at 132. And he's wrestled extremely well and looks a lot stronger this year than he was last year, which is important. But as you mentioned, Garrett Gear back at 132 pounds, I think for the 15th straight year, if I
Yeah.
am checking my records correctly.
He's wrestled
Jared Fulton from Solenko.
Yeah.
Good.
No, well, Gare's, I mean, he's wrestled up at 45 this year. I remember him, and this was 32 that was the first time we saw him at 32 actually compete at 32 was the sectional tournament, where he really didn't have much of a problem going through the bracket, getting 2 falls and a tech fall. But he's wrestled Kelly Keikos from Perkiomen Valley, who's a state medalist, Max Parnas from Westchester East, who he beat 5-4. So he's been battle tested up at 45, 38. Dom Gerardo from Wilson Westlawn, he beat him. He beat Bodie Rouser from Waynesboro, who I think is kind of a sleeper here. He was second out of Section 4, lost 1-0 to Vega in the finals there. Rouser is a guy who, beats Nolan Brown from Daniel Boone in that first match, and I think he's right there with Aiden Bachman should they meet there. So I'm looking at him to potentially upset the apple cart a little bit on that top half. And as you mentioned, Jared Fulton, I think he's got a tough matchup with Ryan Beck from Redland, who's a freshman. I got to see him first at the Cumberland Valley kickoff, and he looked tough. He had a couple good wins. Hasn't quite wrestled all throughout the season that well, but I think he's coming on at the right time here. So Vega to me is the one who I have a lot of questions about. Gare is a guy, he's been there, done that, got the T-shirt, right? He's battle tested, but Vega is the one who I'm saying, okay, can he actually punch through, make a final, or make the top 4 here to advance on to Hershey?
That semifinal, if all goes to plan there, and looking at Garrett Gear to have to go through Jared Fulton, who lost, I think, what was it, like 4-0. He wrestled Matt Repos pretty tight.
Yeah,
in the
it was
finals
very
last
close.
week.
Yeah, it was a lot closer than I expected, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have projected bonus points for that one for Repos, but it didn't happen that way. So for Garrett Gear to have to go through probably Jared Fulton, probably Vega, and then Matt Repos. If he wins this weight class, which that would be my pick, but if he wins this weight class, he will have earned it. I just think Matt Repos, there's a pretty solid chance that if he doesn't score bonus in the finals, it's an 8-2 type decision in the finals. I just think he's a couple cuts above the rest here, and this is a pretty solid weight class otherwise.
Yeah, I mean, I think it got solid. You had some guys dropping down to 32. I think a lot of guys saw that 32 was open. Repos being at 38 and Gare being at 38. I think a lot of people saw 32 as like, hey, I can I can make some noise here if I get down to the weight. So that again plays into it. How sucked down are some of these guys? How healthy are you going to be, and how much energy you're going to have on that second day, after a hard cut. So we'll see. But 138 is 138 is one of my favorite brackets for sure, because you have a huge mix of different levels of where people are at. Carter Davis right out of the gate, man. I'm a big Carter Davis fan. I was definitely impressed with him at the Ultimate Warrior tournament. So ever since then, I'm a fan. Sign me up. I'm definitely I definitely am on the bandwagon for Carter Davis, because I think he's just been wrestling really tough throughout his sophomore campaign. He's in a weight class on the bottom half. Dom Gerardo from Wilson's also there. Dalton Redden from Gettysburg. Clay Gaynor from Hempfield. Mike Beers from CD. So even Thaddeus Krebs from CD East, I wouldn't look past either. So a pretty tough bottom half. But the top half, Alazar for Alicia from Manheim Township, who was at our tournament, The Surge, and told me his name about 40 times how to pronounce it. And I told him, I'm like, look, I'm going to screw it up when I talk about you. So Alicia is kind of how I figured that's how you pronounce it. And he'll correct me if I'm wrong. He's been kind of the guy here, right? He's been the guy at 138 that folks have been chasing. Wyatt Dillon from Dover, I like him as well. But again, you have a couple guys here that have really set themselves apart, but then another tier where guys are really going to be battling for those other spots.
So I think Alicia, his growth in terms of postseason was stunted by being in the same weight class as Matt Repos last year. He was clearly the second best guy at 126 pounds in District 3, but you didn't hear his name or you didn't talk about him a whole lot because he just wasn't much of a factor in that head-to-head matchup with Repo. So now Repo sticks at 32. Alicia's at 138. He's the favorite, but I'll tell you, man, Carter Davis, since he dropped 138, has been almost unbeatable. And so I'm excited about the potential for that final, but there's a lot of work to be done. And I look at Dalton Redden, Mike Beers, and Thaddeus Krebs, like they are almost exactly the same guy to me. They are. They
have very similar results too.
They're all juniors, similar records, plucky juniors who might not have the highest ceiling in the world, but they're getting the most out of what they have. They're all kind of the same guy. I'm not sure if it's quite enough to get out of this bracket and to get to Hershey, but they're going to be a thorn in somebody's side. And you have, Beers and Krebs wrestling head to head. I don't think either one of those guys is much of a match for Carter Davis to project that. I think Carter Davis, the way that things are going for him, I will project him to get through Dom Gerardo from Wilson in the semifinals, if that's the way that one goes down. Reese Palulak from Redlands, 25-4. He looked pretty good last weekend. He's looked pretty solid all season long, and he's somebody who can kind of, as you would like to say, upset the apple cart. I think he's a solid bet. And Wyatt Dillon, the sophomore from Dover, looks to have improved a great deal from day one until now. So he's kind of a wild card too. You can see those two guys maybe battling it out for the right to wrestle Alicia in the semifinals.
Carter Davis, you look at what he's done since dropping to 38. He's just mauled people. I mean, beat a tough Liam Cornetto 10-2. Beat a state medalist Connor Heckman 2-1. Beat Cole Bisco, a state runner-up, 1-0. Beat a Connor Saylor from Hickory 5-3 in sudden victory, who was number 2 in the state at the time. He's just been. He's had a hit list as long as my arm. He's really just been coming on to his own, and I think that's indicative of what Chris and Eric Albright down at Central York have been able to instill into that program. I think those are two of the top-notch guys you're going to have in a program, and I think Carter Davis wrestling the way he is kind of is evidence of that. Wyatt Dillon, I agree. I mean, he's peaking at the right time, as you would say, and he has a win over Reese. He beat him at the Cumberland Valley Kickoff, who that was a match that I paid a lot of attention to, because I'm thinking, okay, this is these are two guys that I think are in the mix at 138 pounds this year. And sure enough, here we find them both at the same weight, even though Wyatt Dillon had wrestled, I believe he wrestled 32 this year at one time, but elected to stay at 38. So yeah, it's Alicia and Davis are the two guys that I'm looking for, but how can you bet against Carter Davis after the hits that he's been giving? So this could be his breakout performance, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I mean, you can say that his breakout performance already occurred, but
That's true.
postseason
Yeah,
breakout
that's
is
true.
still is still pending. But as you rattle off the guys that he went head to head with and beat, it kind of lends some confidence that he's going to be able to continue to survive and advance. He's gone head to head with really tough guys. I don't think he's going to be intimidated by the stage at all. I think this final, assuming it plays out and the chalk kind of prevails, this final is going to be a really good one.
Well, I mean, you mentioned it. Maybe he did already have his breakout, but as a wise person once told me, that those are AA guys, Jeff. Okay, let's see what you can do against the AAA boys. And you look at those AA guys, and those AA guys are pretty damn good. So I still think you're right. That was probably his coming out party at the Ultimate Warrior. But now in the postseason, this is really where we start to see how that pans out. 145 pounds. You look at this weight class, and it got a lot tougher with Mike Trainer from Octorara coming down to 145. I wasn't expecting that. He comes down and makes just a lot of depth here. Noah Rice from York Suburban is also here, 32-4, has had a great season thus far. But the guy that everyone's kind of looking at is Regan Lefevre from Hempfield. And he's a guy who's been up and down, back and forth with some guys. And the question I have is can a guy like Aiden Swan, a Caden Rouser, one of those guys, potentially reach the semifinals? Because you look at that other quadrant with Arthur Rude of CD and Max Haas of Cedar Cliff, I think Swan and Rouser are both better than either one of those guys. So, can they punch through to the semifinals and make some noise? And you just got there's just a lot of depth here. Keaton Fisher from Conestoga Valley is the guy that really is, he and Lefevre have gone back and forth. I think they've wrestled 4 times this year already. And I think it's probably 2-2 already this year. I'm going to have to double check that. But those guys could meet in the quarterfinals, and that could end up being the champion potentially if Mike Trainer comes out in the bottom half. So I'm looking forward to seeing a Trainer and Noah Rice semifinal potentially, and that semifinal in the top actually may end up being a quarterfinal there with Regan and Keaton Fisher.
So I think Fisher and Lefevre have wrestled 3 times, and Fisher's won twice. Fisher's definitely beaten him twice. And
Definitely
so the
won the
fact
last one.
that Mike, he did win the last one. So the fact that Mike Trainer came down to 45 for this last go at it, he's another guy who feels like he's been around for 15 years. But the fact that he came down to 145 and beat Keaton Fisher in the Section 1 finals means that Fisher-Lefevre matchup happens in the quarterfinals in all likelihood. I agree with you that Caden Rouser and Aiden Swan, really that first round matchup, whoever wins that is likely to reach the semifinals and position themselves really well here. Mike Trainer, heavy favorite in the bottom half of this bracket. Noah Rice is a tough kid there who won Section 4. Jared Porter, the freshman from CD East, is a guy that I don't think this is the year here, but he's got a lot of potential. And I think, if he wrestles at his best, he's capable of springing an upset. He's capable of winning that first round matchup, and I think he's going to wrestle Noah Rice tough in that quarterfinal.
Yeah, I mean, you look at just some of the results. These guys have all wrestled each other, essentially. Lefevre has his only losses were to Pearson Manville and Riley Bauer. That was early in the season. And then the other 2 were to Keaton Fisher. He loses to Keaton Fisher, I think it was 5-3, and then beats him 10-4. So you're feeling pretty good, right? But then you wrestle him 2 days later, and you lose to him 4-3. Regan has a pretty significant win over Noah Rice. He beat him 9-5. So you're right. Mike Trainer coming down just adds a lot of depth to this. It just, again, you look at that bottom half, I think Noah Rice is going to be able to hang, but I think Trainer's a guy who is, like you said, has been around for a long time. Aiden Swan and Caden Rouser is my first round match to watch because I really do believe the winner there makes the semifinal against a Fisher Lefevre winner there. And it's just a shame that those two are going to wrestle in the quarterfinals. And, and I'm not looking past Dane Miller from CV or Jackson Townsend from Gettysburg. Jackson Townsend has 31 wins on the season, but Fisher, look at some of the results that he's had and some of the results that Lefevre have had. They've beaten some top-notch guys to get to where they're at. So I hate seeing those guys meet up in the quarterfinals.
Well, here's my final point, I think, on this 145-pound weight class is that you do have a lot of names who are capable of making a little bit of a run, but the experience on this stage and how much that Mike Trainer has gotten and how much Reagan Lefevre has gotten, a district champ last year at the very same weight class at 145 pounds. I think that's going to matter at Spring Grove. I like them to get to the finals, and I think Reagan Lefevre wins his second straight district title.
Wow. There you heard it here first. He was a district District 3 champion last year, so this would be his second. Who did he beat in the District 3 championship last year? Was it Garvik? I believe it.
Ryan Garvik. Yeah, similar situation.
Garvik. Yeah, they had wrestled a bunch.
Garvik. Yeah, that was, I think, their third time wrestling, and they had split the first two, if I remember correctly.
Yep, I think you're right.
And Lefevre got him here. Yep.
Lefevre's, he's used to wrestling guys a multitude of times, so I guess we'll see how it plays out here shortly. 152 pounds, your boy Dom Frontino from Shippensburg, undefeated on the year. Had a shortened season due to an injury, but he is back. And boy, you look at his run, if he should try to make the finals here, Griffin Gonzalez from Lebanon, 31-2 on the year. Gonzalez is a guy who I've always been a fan of. And also on that top half, you have Braden Edwards from Hempfield, another guy who's just been really consistent for Hempfield. Tyler Bard from West York is on that top half with Griffin Gonzalez. But Logan Newell from Gettysburg, another guy who I just think has upset potential written all over him. I think he had a tough loss in the section finals to Caden Dobbins of Dallastown, who's been really consistent and just pretty dominant throughout the season. One of his losses is to a freshman, Luke Sipes from Altoona, who's really good. But then you have JT Hogan. Man, that bottom half of that bracket is stacked. 152 may be one of the deepest weight classes in the District 3 tournament because you have Frontino, Gonzalez on the top half, Braden Edwards, Logan Newell all in the top half. But then on the bottom half, you have JT Hogan, Gabe Belga, Andrew McClune, and Jarrett Wilson and Caden Dobbins. All pretty darn good wrestlers, all with like 30-plus wins. They all have over 30 wins other than JT Hogan, who's 25. So it's going to be fun to see who comes out from that bottom half. You'd like to think that JT Hogan and Caden Dobbins are going to be the two to meet in the semifinals, but Gabe Belga, my gosh, we've been talking about him forever too. He's in the mix.
Gabe Belga is in the mix. He was in the district finals last year. He lost to Buckman from Central Dauphin there. All those guys. So Dominic Frontino, Griffin Gonzalez. Frontino was a district champion as a freshman 2 years ago. Griffin Gonzalez was a sophomore district champion last year. Caden Dobbins wrestled and lost to Josh Miller from Central Dauphin in the 138 district finals last year. He's capable of being there. So you've got four guys right there who have been at least in the district finals. And then JT Hogan, which I'm not sure if he has or has not been, but certainly as a the way that the are sort of pre-slotted, Section 1 and Section 3, those showdowns and sectional finals ended up creating this situation where you're probably going to get Dominic Frontino and Griffin Gonzalez in the quarterfinals, and you're probably going to get JT Hogan and Gabe Belga in the quarterfinals as well. Caden Dobbins, his other loss was a 1-0 decision to Gabe Belga earlier in the
Right.
year too. So those guys are extremely close to each other. I don't think you're going to see many blowouts. You're going to see 1-point decisions. I think in the quarterfinal between Belga and JT Hogan, you're going to see a 1-point decision probably between Frontino and Gonzalez. Whoever makes it out of the top, if it is Caden Dobbins or if it is Gabe Belga or JT Hogan, I mean, you could put money on all three of those guys. But I think you're going to get a 1-point decision in the finals, too. You're going to see a lot of tight matchups. And to your point, probably more tight matchups in this bracket than any other bracket in the district.
So let me break down Caden Dobbins for you real quick because, he had that loss to Luke Sipes in the Panther Holiday Classic Finals, beats Eric Aldurfer from Faith Christian Academy, a 2-time state medalist who's ranked high in the state. But then after taking that 1-0 loss to Gabe Belga, okay, that was on January 15th. Since then, in every single match, he has either gotten a pin or a tech fall. Every single match. So, I mean, the guy's on a roll, right? I mean, he's pinned or teched everybody since that loss to Gabe Belga on January 15th, including a 27-second fall over Logan Newell of Gettysburg in the sectional finals. Tech followed Braden Edwards 17-2. There's Braden Edwards, you're a section champ. You're like, oh yeah, I teched him 17-2. Tyler Bard teched him 17-0. So Dobbins is definitely peaking at the right time, no doubt. And I agree that him and JT Hogan are likely going to, Belga and Hogan will probably be one of the best quarterfinals in all of the, the rounds to watch. Same with Gonzalez and Frontino, but I like Frontino in that top half a lot. And I know you got to talk to him a little bit. He's probably back to form now because, 16 matches is not a whole ton, but I feel like he's back to form.
He's in good form. He's in better shape than I would have expected. But at the same time, I mean, this kid, I would go to him for advice. He would be a mentor to me at 17 years old. Like I was laughing with it. I had him on my podcast, the Penn Live Wrestling podcast, which went up today, Tuesday. But he has his future planned out. He is incredibly mature, incredibly poised, knows how to position himself on the mat. And looking at where he is, he's 152 this year. He's 138 last year. He was kind of the odd man out in the district tournament. It was Josh Miller, Caden Dobbins, and then Dom Frontino. But he got a lot stronger this year. And I think when you're looking at the way Caden Dobbins is built, the way Gabe Belga is built, it was imperative that he got a lot stronger, and he did. I really like his chances here. He's going to be battle tested right away with Griffin Gonzalez, but I think he gets to the finals, and I'm going to pick Dom Frontino to win this thing.
I thought you came to me for advice. Now you're going to a 17-year-old for advice? That's...
I come to you for wrestling type advice. I go to Dom Frontino for life of advice.
Life advice. Okay. What does a 17-year-old know about life, Dustin? All right, come on.
This one does. This one does. Talk to him this weekend. You'll find out.
All right, I'll find out. I'll see what stocks I should be investing in. Let's go up to 160 pounds. 160 pounds. Ryan Garvik from CD, a sophomore, back into the district tournament here, 33-3 on the season. I have a lot of questions at 160 pounds because I don't know what to expect. Macon Myers from Central York has looked good as of late, but has also had some losses that I'm like, what happened there? Nick Nettleton from Exeter, I got to see him at our tournament, the Surge, and I thought he looked really good. He took a couple of losses in the opening tournament CV kickoff, lost to Ryan Fairchild, lost to Devin Deem, and then got injured. I think that was the Buckskin Classic. It was a holiday tournament he got injured at. But since then has looked really good. Beat a tough John Rathman from Cocalico in the section finals. He's kind of the one I'm circling to say, okay, how are you going to be? But Myers as well is somebody who, if he's on, he's on. Like, watch out. Like I've seen him wrestle in the off season, have some big time results. If he is, and it may be between his ears, but man, if he's on, he's going to be tough to beat. So I wouldn't be surprised to see him potentially make it out to the finals there. David Woolley from Warwick, also a guy I like. He's 34-5 on the season out of that pretty tough Section 2. That Section 2 tournament was pretty loaded with Garvik there in the finals against Woolley. And then also you had who else did you have? You had Grant Hoover as well, and Ty Grassel from Penn Manor. So, the question here is can Garvik punch through? Can Garvik get the title?
I think he absolutely can. I think he's the guy that you'd have to install as the favorite. But as a sophomore here, I was waiting to see, whether Ryan Garvik would stick at 160 or whether he would choose to go down where he could be a little bit longer than his competition. I want to see how his strength measures up to some of these more, bigger, more experienced senior type guys. But he's without a doubt super technical, really, really good wrestler. The favorite to win the bracket, I think, but there are some, landmines along the way, as you would say. I really like the way Anthony Brashino, the sophomore from Cumberland Valley, is wrestling right now. He won the Section 3 title. He beat Max Klingensmith from Lower Dolphin in the final, but he beat another really good sophomore and Anthony D'Angelo from Carlisle in the semifinal round, where I think that whoever wins between David Woolley and Anthony D'Angelo in that first round matchup could and should give Nick Nettleton from Exeter a handful in the quarterfinal round. And I think Anthony D'Angelo is a high upside kid. I think he needs that moment. He needs that arrival, that breakthrough moment. And beating David Woolley, a senior, in the first round of the district tournament would qualify as that breakthrough moment for him. I think he's got a bright future ahead, and he just kind of needs that one nudge to get up to the area that bracket in the quarterfinals. That'll be a really good one. And I think whoever comes out of that, Garvik's going to have to battle. He's going to have to scrape. He's going to have to fight to get through to the finals there. And then I don't think anything's going to come easy there. If the best Macon Myers shows up, that's a tough matchup. So there's, I think it's pretty wide open. The favorite in this weight class isn't as prohibitive as some other weight classes. And then looking beyond them, Nick Nettleton, David Woolley, Anthony D'Angelo, Macon Myers, Anthony Brashino, Jacob Cherry. I mean, there are some guys, the silver medalists here could be one of, I'd say, 5 or 6 names.
Yeah, no, I mean, you look at the depth, and as you mentioned, I mean, look at all those names. Jacob Sherry is a guy who, I thought for sure, coming into this is definitely in the mix. Myers beats him, though, in the section finals, and now Cherry's sitting. He has a good opening round match. Brashino is a guy who, he's been up a lot of, he's wrestled up a lot this year, and being down at 160, he's going to turn some heads. I really do believe that. I think he's going to, potentially he could upset Garvik. I really don't think Garvik's a lock on that top half. He's beaten Rathman. Garvik beat him 10-2, so I'm not really too concerned with him not getting to the semifinals. But, should he get Brashino, I think that's going to be a dogfight. And Myers down on the bottom half, and Nettleton's got to, if he's healthy, he's got to take it one match at a time, because I agree that David Woolley and Anthony D'Angelo match, winner there is going to push him and want to get that upset. So 160, again, not as clear as one may expect, considering you have a guy like Ryan Garvik at the top. There's just something about this bracket that I have bad feelings about. Like, I'm just like, things are going to get mixed up here. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but I just feel like there's going to be some people here who are like, he made it out of this bracket, like that's crazy. But I guess only time will tell.
It's what they call in the biz here, Jeff, an apple cart bracket.
Is that what they call it? You don't like the upset the apple cart terminology here I'm using? I like
on the contrary, I love it. I actually love it.
Listen, but Mark Billett tells me I can't say stop sleeping on people, because apparently that's used too much. I can't say landmines because that's used too much. So now I say upset the apple cart, and apparently that's used too much. I can't win. It's just like unbelievable.
Listen, kid. If you need any advice on this matter, don't come to me. Come to Dominic Frontino. He can help you out.
Yeah, because he learned from Tristan Warner. So and Tristan Warner is a guy I definitely go for advice to. You know who does a lot of winning It's Tucker Hogan from Daniel Boone, one of my favorite wrestlers in the entire state. He was on our True Power card. Really, really like Tucker a lot. Good kid, good wrestler, just wrestles hard. His only loss is to Nolan Lear of Benton. That was at the Midwinter Mayhem finals. He's 36-1. He's on the top. Ain't nobody touching him. Even Cole Bartram from Northern. I would say Tucker Hogan is definitely the guy here. Kevin Olivaria from Manheim Township. Boy, he's dangerous. He is dangerous. But he's beatable, right? If you watch film on him, you know what he does. Cole Bartram is a guy who you at the beginning of the year, you're thinking, man, like he had a great Cumberland Valley kickoff tournament, was good at the King of the Mountain, but Tucker Hogan's on a different level, in my opinion. I think Tucker Hogan's here, and then you got like Oliveria and Bartram kind of around here, and then the rest of it, throw it all out the window, mix it up in a bag, because Isaiah Feeney maybe from Dallastown. I mean, it's crazy. I didn't think he was gonna win a section title. Jamal Lewis from York Suburban, who has been in and out of the lineup for quite a while here. It's just a weird dynamic. But outside of those big three, Hogan, Bartram, and Oliveria, I don't know what to expect. I thought Tyler Withers was going to win Section 4, and that didn't happen. Isaiah Feeney, 29-11, ends up winning it. So I'll tell you what, man, Dallastown, my last career match was to a Dallastown wrestler. So I have a pretty bitter feeling about being, ending my career with a loss to Thornton from Dallastown. But I can tell you what, man, those Dallastown Wildcats, they wrestle hard. And I think that showed in that section tournament.
They specialize in ending careers, is what they do. That's and in all honesty, as the season wears on and the postseason begins, both team and individual, they wrestle at a higher level, and that's just kind of what they do. And so for that reason, Isaiah Feeney, you think about, look at Brooks Gable the last couple
for
years.
Sure, Brooks, good example.
He surged late. And I believe he got a state medal, right? One of those 2 seasons, he got a state medal. So he, I think you might see another Dallastown guy. Maybe Isaiah Feeney is that guy. But to me, I mean, this is a 3-name bracket for me. Tucker Hogan is clear-cut number 1. Not only, is he, let's say Cole Bartram from Northern gets out of that bottom half of the bracket. Not only is Tucker Hogan just on a higher level, I think, than Cole Bartram, he is a terrible matchup for a lot of guys, but especially Cole Bartram. Bartram's probably going to go into this thing. Now, look, he's got probably the heaviest hands I've seen this year. And he has a physical, he is going to beat up your head. He's going to beat up your neck. He's going to make you feel it. He's going to push. He's going to bully. He is that guy, but he's also a little bit on the small, short side for 172, where that is not Tucker Hogan's problem at all. Tucker Hogan is everywhere, and I think there's a decent chance. I like Bartram and I like Oliveria, but there's a decent chance that Tucker Hogan scores bonus the whole way through and wins this one, pretty decisively. The real intrigue in my eyes is who's getting out of that semifinal, presuming it's Kevin Oliveria and Cole Bartram there. That should be a war. I like Bartram a little bit better, but it's pretty close to 50-50, I think.
And you had mentioned about what you're looking forward to. I want to know who that 4th is, right? Because I really think it could be 6 or 7 guys who are finish that 4th spot, because we have 3 clearly tough, top of the caliber guys here. But that 4th spot, it could be Brett Barbush from Manheim Central, could be freshman Mitchell Adams from Carlisle. I mean, Adams has had a good year, right? And then, second in the section, and he has a good open round match there. And I don't know. Is it Feeney? Is it Jamal Lewis? Is it Ty Withers, who bounces back from a disappointing sectional tournament? So while we know Tucker Hogan is going to do Tucker Hogan things, I want to know who that 4th is, because it may surprise us, right? To have a Jamal Lewis or an Isaiah Feeney punching through to the state tournament. That's what I like about brackets like 172. Let's go up to 189 pounds, where Johnny Miller of Exeter. Boy, I've been impressed with Miller from Jump Street. He was a Super 32 medalist to start this season off. Came up to the Surge, was a runner-up there. He's wrestled really well this season at 37-2. But on that top half, you got Dylan Bard from Hempfield, who won a section title. You've got Diesel Kozer from Shippensburg, who is pretty tough. Michael Klinger from Dallastown. We know Dallastown, they're just career enders. And on the bottom half, you have Aiden Height, who has probably been one of the hottest sophomores in District 3. I know you're the District 3 guy, but I follow District 3 pretty close, and Aiden Height has been he's been on fire. Won a section title. He pinned James Elias from Ephrata, who was the Section 1 runner-up, who he's likely going to see in the quarterfinals. So I like that matchup. I think Height is a guy who's going to get out to the semifinals and potentially have like a T. Conover, even like a Jonathan Lopez from Conestoga Valley, who's pretty, decent at the weight here. But Johnny Miller's, I think, the guy, but then I think Aiden Height is not too far behind. Diesel Kozer, what type of wrestler are we going to see out of him? He had a win over Height last year. Is he going to be somebody who can finish in that third spot potentially?
Oh, he absolutely can. I think, with that name, he was destined to be a gritty District 3 189 pounder. You're not born Diesel Kozer and be a finesse guy. So I think that matchup with Michael Klinger in the first round could be a really good one. And then I think whoever wins that one, the matchup with Dylan Bard should be a tight one. Those guys, I put them really in the same tier of 189 pounders. I think everybody in this weight class is fighting for second place, in my opinion. Johnny Miller is a pretty hefty favorite in my viewpoint. If you want a medal at Super 32, you need to be watched. I don't know who his other loss was to, but he wrestled Sonny Sasso pretty tough opening weekend, and I think that pretty much says everything you need to say about Johnny Miller. I think he wins this one pretty convincingly, and then the rest of it, I like Aiden Height's path to the finals too. Having pinned James Ellis before, I like him to get the whole way through to the finals there and finish as a runner-up. And then, Diesel Kozer, I really he is a much improved wrestler over last year. Michael Klinger is a sort of that solid, gritty veteran guy from Dallastown who'll have to work to get through that matchup. T. Conover is tough. Dylan Bard is tough. You've got a list of probably 5 or 6 names who, again, in my eyes, are all competing for silver at best, and I think maybe even bronze, because I think Aiden Height gets out of that bottom half too.
So Aiden Height and Diesel Kozer have had a lot of history. Last year they split matches. I think Height beat him. Height lost 13-8. No, I'm sorry. Kozer won the first time around 13-8. And then Kozer beat Height 9-4 in the sectional tournament. Now, fast forward to this year, they've split matches again. So Diesel Kozer, they wrestled, I believe it was, it was December 18th. Kozer beat him 3-1, but this last time they wrestled in the section finals, Height won 3-2. And Kozer's only losses are to Gage Wolf, Tucker Painter, Noah Foltz, a couple times, and Colin Neal, who he's wrestled a few times. I agree with Height being kind of the guy on that bottom half, but Johnny Miller, you're right. He's on a different level, and I agree. I remember that match with Sonny Sasso. Sonny Sasso was clearly in control of the match, but Johnny Miller he didn't go down. He went down swinging, so to speak. Yeah, I agree. Silver through 3 or 4. I don't really know necessarily how it's going to play out, but I would expect that we get our top 2 seeds here in the finals, and the rest is like, hey, battle it out. But Kozer has, like you said, with a name like Diesel Kozer, you can't not perform at a high level, right?
And you can't not be tough.
Not be tough.
Both of those things are pretty much givens with him. I like him to get on the podium somewhere and make it through to Hershey.
Well, let's go up to 100, or it's not 100, 215 pounds. I was going to say 115 pounds. That's definitely not a weight class anymore. 215 pounds, where unlikely, I wouldn't say unlikely just because Not a lot of people outside of District 3 know him. In fact, I know many people don't know the name Travis Armstrong, but they should. He is 30-1 on the year. Now, granted, his only loss is a tech fall to Austin Johnson. I think this just speaks to how good Austin Johnson is. He lost to Austin Johnson by tech fall 16-0 in 4 minutes and 34 seconds opening weekend at Top Hat. But Travis Armstrong, and we just put an article up on Rockfin on him. He came out and pinned Zach Evans in 35 seconds. Dustin, you were there for that. Was that a fluke, or was that just him coming out and just mauling him? What was that about?
Well, he, these two wrestled last year at sectionals too, and Armstrong pinned Zach Evans. And last year when it happened, it was a surprise. Travis Armstrong was down in the match, and caught him and pinned him. This year, right off the opening whistle, got right to work. And I think, it speaks to his mindset change. Like, I wrote a story about Travis Armstrong earlier in the year too, and working with Marquise Holton from Central Dolphin, who actually competed against Travis Armstrong when he was a freshman or sophomore. And those two guys working together, I think you've seen Travis Armstrong undergo some pretty significant changes from a technique and wrestling standpoint, but also from a mindset standpoint. And I really like him a lot. I think this is a tournament here, and 215 and 152 are both kind of similar in my eyes, where the depth throughout is going to mean whoever is going to make it through, they're going to have to wrestle tough in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. I think Travis Armstrong has as good a shot as anybody. I think he's got a handful of ranked wins this year, including Zach Evans by fall last weekend. He also beat Mason Hale.
Hayden Kovalik. Hayden Kovalik from Clearfield.
From Clearfield, yeah, and Ty Feisenmeyer or Fitzenmeyer, whatever, it's from Saucon Valley. So Armstrong didn't build a 30-1 record by fluke. I think he's a really tough kid and a really good wrestler too. And I'm really excited to see how that matches up with Robert Utz, who's a senior from Southwestern. Ryan McMillan, the sophomore from Wilson. Samuel Rodriguez, senior, who when he's at his best is really tough. Zach Evans in the bottom half. Like, it wouldn't surprise me if he makes a run here either. He's a Fargo All-American. Yeah. And then you also have, Jose Garcia, who I think you got him at number 5 from JP McCaskey, who's unbeaten. You've got the number 5, the number 11, 12, 10, 15, 18, whatever the case might be. You've got, 5 guys who I could make a case are going to win this thing. And so, one of them's not making it to Hershey.
Well, a whole lot of guys that are ranked in the top 25 in the state aren't making it to Hershey, right? So Armstrong, and you're right, it's no fluke. He pinned Zach Evans last year as well. And his 2 of his losses last year were to the state finalists, Jacob Lucas and Josh Harkless, who he was in the same district with. So you're right. He's definitely battle tested in that sense. But 215, like 152, 215 may be the deepest weight class in District 3. I know that's weird, and I know people are going to be like, that's crap. No, there's no way. Yes way. You look at the state rankings, this is pound for pound has a plethora. Maybe I haven't counted, but I'm pretty sure the most state-ranked guys in the top 20. Jose Garcia from JP McCaskey is the guy who I think is poised to come out and have a good showing. He's, JP McCaskey doesn't wrestle the toughest schedule, but he trains with the Law Wrestling Club. He gets his hands on some pretty tough guys down there. And I think he's, again, you look at the road, Ian Winchester from Twin Valley, guy who has a win over Ryan McMillan. He lost to him in the section finals, but Ryan McMillan, 30-4 in the year, one of the top sophomores in the state, top freshman last year. Then you got Logan Herbst from Spring Grove also up there on that top half. Robert Utz, as you mentioned, a senior from Southwestern. There are landmines everywhere. Armstrong wins that first match. Utz is his quarterfinal match. Then you have a Herbst-McMillan match. I think McMillan wins that. So Armstrong would have to go through Utz and then he would have to go through Ryan McMillan in order to get to that finals match. Sam Rodriguez, on the other hand, from Gettysburg, has been on fire as well. Zach Evans, if he beats Jake Humphrey, him and Sam Rodriguez should be a good match. And then Winchester and Jose Garcia winner. I mean, again, there's just so much talent here at 215 pounds that it's hard to pick. You know, it's who's hot right now. And Armstrong is you don't pin Zach Evans in 35 seconds and not be on a different level. But Jose Garcia, they call him JG3. He's Jose Garcia the third. I'd like him as well to come out from that bottom half. But man, these 4 spots are going to be hard-earned spots. There's no doubt.
And I think, what I want to see is, Ryan McMillan, talented kid. Travis Armstrong, can he absorb Armstrong's physicality? Because if he can, I mean, that's going to be a battle in the semifinal if that's how it plays out there. Sam Rodriguez, when he's at his best, he's a long, athletic kid, and he has beaten some good guys. And I think you've seen him, when he doesn't wrestle his best, he's pretty beatable. But he's going to tower above Zach Evans in that quarterfinal. What does Zach Evans do with that? One guy, I don't think Owen Hutchinson is a sophomore from Big Spring. I think this weight class has too much for him. But the same thing I said about Jared Porter at 145, where, he's gonna be something. And I think this might be a year too soon because you've got so many established veterans higher than him in the pecking order in this weight class. But he's a guy, I wouldn't take Ian Winchester as a given in round 1, put it that way.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying he's a given either. But it's again, there's just so many guys here who can battle, and there's so many comparable results. Like, these guys have wrestled a lot of each other. Ian Winchester, Ryan McMillan, Zach Evans, and obviously Travis Armstrong. Utz and Herbst have wrestled a whole bunch. Rodriguez has wrestled all of them. So Jose Garcia is really the guy who hasn't wrestled a whole lot of these folks, right? And he's the one I'm really excited to see. I know I've been hearing a lot of good things about him and JP McCaskey. So let's move up to heavyweight, where we have Leighton Schmick from Carlisle. He's your top seed. He's a junior, 34-2 on the season. One of those losses, the guy named Nick Feldman, I'm pretty sure. I've never heard of him, but heard he's pretty good. On the bottom half, you have Trevor Gallagher from Gettysburg, who actually lost to Ben Stewart from CD. I don't know if that was the district finals, Dustin?
Yeah,
which I was surprised about.
Yeah, well, I mean, so they wrestled in the district finals 2 years in a row. So 2 years ago, when Central Dauphin won, Ben Stewart pinned Trevor Gallagher. And that was, to me, the biggest difference in that match. Central Dauphin had a lot of things not go its way, but Ben Stewart being able to pin Trevor Gallagher, a lat drop type, move. That's Ben Stewart's bread and butter. That made a big difference 2 years ago. Now, such a bizarre scene to see the guy who I think a lot of us kind of agree the consensus second best guy in District 3 wrestling Ben Stewart in the district team finals again this year, trying to limit bonus points to Ben Stewart. It was really, just a strange thing to watch. That was his job, though, in that setting. He knew and has experienced how quickly things can turn with Ben Stewart, and was kind of wrestling conservatively just not to give up the bonus. And Ben Stewart had him on his back again last year. So I think Ben Stewart is just a bad matchup all around for Trevor Gallagher. And I think Gallagher is probably looking at this thing saying, oh, thank God, Ben Stewart's in the top half of the bracket.
Right. Like, get him away from me. There's a few guys here that I'm just like, which one of you is going to show up? Because like Caleb Mussman from Hempfield is a guy who at time has looked really good. He has a nice win over Giltsky from Emmaus, lost to Matt Cruz. But you look at some of the guys who's wrestled recently. Trevor Gallagher lost 3-0. Hunter Bisking 5-4. And we haven't even talked about Hunter Bisking, and he was third out of Section 4. So I think Bisking is somebody who's going to push the pace with Tyrese Washington from Manheim Township, and him and Schmick. Schmick's got a tough road. There's no doubt about it. Schmick is probably going to see Bisking, and then an Ethan Miller on that bottom half. I like Ethan Miller a lot. Got to see him a few times this year, and boy, he's tough. And him and Trevor Gallagher went at it in the section finals. Ethan Miller is probably a guy who could wrestle 215, but has elected to go up to 285 for the postseason. And he's been really tough. He's got a win over Ben Stewart. They already wrestled this year, so that have that history. And you had talked about that with that matchup. It's just a bad matchup between two guys here, and having a win over a guy already going into it is mentally that's obviously going to help him. But on that bottom half, I think Gallagher's the guy, right? I mean, he's already got a win over Mussman. I don't see anybody really challenging Gallagher on that bottom half. And, that top half is really a lot tougher with Schmick up there, Bisking, Miller, Stewart being dangerous. But I think it's Schmick and Gallagher and a lot of fighting for that third and fourth. And Ethan Miller could upset the apple cart there, Dustin.
I love it. I was hoping you get that in one more time. We're through here. So a couple things with this weight class. I think it's a fascinating weight class. I hold Tyrese Washington, Hunter Bisking, Ethan Miller, Ben Stewart, Caleb Mussman, and maybe to a little lesser extent, Michael Hershey, almost in the exact same regard. Like there is not a lot of difference, between those guys. So it's going to kind of come down to matchups in terms of who's going home. If we agree that Leighton Schmick and Trevor Gallagher are your 1 and 2, who's coming home with 3 and 4 could kind of come down to who's matching up with who in the consolation round. So it'll be fun to watch. Here and Ethan Miller, long, athletic, and light, and Ben Stewart, who's a true blue 280 pounder who wants to go upper body. He wants to try and throw you. He's going to be giving up a lot of height to Ethan Miller. Is he going to be able to get to the stuff that he uses to pin guys? I think Ethan Miller is kind of uniquely positioned to get out of it, but then I don't think Ethan Miller wants to fall underneath Ben Stewart at all in terms of shots, in terms of being on the mat and wrestling. So I think that weight contrast is going to be pretty glaring in round one. And that should be a pretty fun one that, I think the whole spectrum of outcomes is on the table. Bonus points in either direction, or it could be a tight decision. I think there are going to be some interesting moments in that one. And then the final point I would make about this weight class is that Leighton Schmick has beaten Trevor Gallagher, I think, twice this year. They came in, I think, having won the same number of matchups against each other. So I think you've seen Leighton Schmick overtake Trevor Gallagher as the district's best heavyweight. So now Leighton Schmick 2 years ago came in and out of nowhere kind of pinned an unbeaten kid, I think from Central York. I wish I had the name in front of me. I don't. So he was a big surprise.
Michael
as a
Wolfgram?
freshman.
He pinned Michael Wolfgram?
No, but maybe must not have been Central York. It might have been York Suburban. Somebody who was undefeated, who was sort of like a controversial high seed. Leighton Schmick upset him and pinned him in round 1, I think. And this was 2 years ago as a freshman. So maybe you can research this as I'm going on. The point I'm making with Leighton Schmick is, and so last year he was clearly second best to Dylan Rodenhaber from Redland, who I believe was on his way to a state medal before he blew out his knee at the Super Regional. So you haven't seen Leighton Schmick go into a tournament as the clear-cut top guy, the number 1 seed, the favorite. And so this is going to be a new role for him where he's been afforded the opportunity to fly under the radar a little bit. Now he's got to wear that hat as the favorite. I think he's going to wear it just fine, but it is going to be a different type of feeling for him to try to go out there and wrestle as if he's got nothing to lose, when it's clear as the favorite that he's got a lot to lose in this one.
So it was Jacob Sharp from York Suburban, who he or York Tech, and that was at 220 actually. That was at 220.
Okay, 220,
And then that was a weird weight class. That was a very strange weight class. You're right. Leighton Schmick has certainly separated himself, having that win over Trevor Gallagher this year already. It was 7-3. I think he's clearly the guy, right? But you mentioned it, Ethan Miller, man. he's not a guy I want to wrestle. He's very athletic. He's clearly a guy who plays multiple sports, and you know, I see trouble there if I wrestle him. So a guy to keep an eye on, right? That's for the top and bottom, man. That was 106 to 285 in an hour and a half. I'm impressed, Dustin. Things get kicked off on Friday. The first round will start at 3:00. That's round of 16, followed by the quarterfinals and wrestleback. They'll wrestle up through the quarterfinals, and then Saturday they come back at 10 a.m. and wrestle the semifinals. So a lot of fun packed day. I don't really love the location of Spring Grove because of where it's at. Like, it's in the middle of nowhere, and it's just I don't know. I like it when AA and AAA are together so I can see more. But I mean, I get it. I understand why. It's just, I kind of wish things were a little bit differently.
I think modern economics and the fact that they wrestled this tournament at Giant Center with the rental price involved with that, I'm gonna miss it, but those days are long gone. I would love to see the tournament under the same roof again, but I don't know if or when that's coming back. They're very satisfied with the way that Central Dauphin East hosts AA and with the way Spring Grove hosts AAA. Spring Grove is not central to District 3 at all. Hershey is pretty central to District 3 when you look at it going all the way east to Reading, down south to Adams County and Gettysburg and York. Spring Grove is not dead center, but they've got a willing and able, capable venue, and it's a nice tournament when you're there. But I agree with you. Like, I live pretty central in District 3, and it takes me an hour to get to Spring Grove.
Right. Well, if you're lucky, maybe I'll let you shack up with me. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see if you upset the apple cart at all anymore. See, I got in one more time.
You stole it.
I got in one more time. Dusty, bring it, Hawkinsmith. Well, it was a pleasure having you on and talking through this and breaking down the District 3 South Central Regional. Remember, these are the first 4 wrestlers into the state tournament. So on Saturday night, we will have 4 of the 20 figured out in each bracket, which I just love. I love that, and it's going to be a lot of fun, and get to see a lot of folks that we haven't seen in a while. So it's going to be a lot of good fun. I'll see you there, Dustin, and thank you for taking time out tonight to join me. Even though you froze and you were skipping a whole bunch, you didn't actually freeze and stay frozen. So I guess it's a little bit better, but still not great. So try to be better. Bring it next time.
I will bring it the next time, and by bring it, I mean go to a place with a reliable internet connection.
Cool. All right. Well, for Dustin Hawkinsmith, I am Jeff Upson. Make sure you stay tuned in to PA Power Wrestling on Rockfin. We got updated rankings. We got a whole bunch of stories coming out. Podcasts, we're up. PA Power Hour, the whole gambit here. So make sure you stay locked in, and we will see you soon from Spring Grove High School. See ya.